Women are betting on themselves by starting businesses at a 69% higher rate than 5 years ago. I'm Kelly Callahan Poe, host of the Marketing Moms podcast. Today's episode is called Betting on Yourself, What It Takes to Fly Solo with Sue Kirchner. Sue is the founder and CEO of Brand Strong Marketing, a brand strategy firm helping small and mid-sized businesses find what makes them unique and own it. With 25 plus years of experience, she helps business owners stop stumbling over their story and start attracting the right clients. Welcome, Sue.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here, Kelly. Thank you.
Well, I love this topic because it's very relevant to me. When someone in advertising or marketing says, I want to go out on my own, walk us through the options. What is the real menu of options here?
Yeah, that was one of the first things I learned when I decided to go out on my own, and it was something that it was interesting. It was the group I was working at corporate America, but I had this dream of starting my own business, and then the company I was working with suddenly decided they were going to move our whole group to Florida, and I'm like, great, I'm going to go out, I'm going to go do my own thing because I'd been thinking about that, but. I was lucky enough to have a professor who was a mentor of mine while I was getting my MBA, and he's like, "Oh, you want to go out on your own? Here, let me help you get started." And so he was one of the first people who helped me see that there's a variety of opportunities for starting a business. So when I went out on my own to start with, he actually offered me something that I hadn't thought was possible, which is aligning yourself with another company, having a strategic alliance. So if you're starting out on your own and you say, oh, I want to be a solopreneur, or I want to be an expert for hire, or maybe you do want to build a business, but you're getting started. One of the best things that I found was you can have other companies that are ancillary to your expertise.
Yeah.
And you can find a position and say, hey, do you need someone to do market research for your clients? Do you need someone to write copy for your clients? Do you need something? So I actually ended up working, my professor had this arrangement with a company that was a product ideation firm called Herbst Lazar Bell. And he was a market research expert. And so he was on staff. He had a business card that said he was a team member for this company, but he wasn't actually. He had his own business, but he would then appear to be part of that firm whenever they had a need for someone to do market research for their clients. And he's like, hey, you should do that as well. So I then started working with other marketing agencies because what I was doing with brand strategy and voice of customer research and identification of target markets and all that, that was something that a lot of marketing agencies didn't have someone on staff to do.
Yeah.
So they would then bring me in as an expert when they had their clients asking for those kinds of particular skill sets. And it was wonderful because when you go out on your own and start a business, and if you're starting as a solopreneur, the way you're going to grow faster is to have more feet on the street selling your services, so
Yeah.
to speak, because you only have so much time and energy to be out there selling yourself. And once you get a client job, if it's just you, then you're spending a lot of time doing client work as opposed to getting your next client. So it's great to have these strategic alliances with other firms in order to have them be selling your services and bring you in on client projects. So that's one model that I learned about was, I could certainly start and have my own business. I can still sell to my own clients, but I'm aligned with a company that can bring me in as an expert when needed. The other thing I've seen people do, other women who are getting into entrepreneurship is they'll get a license or they'll be part of a fractional community.
Mm.
So there's groups out there like Sales Accelerator, B2B CFO, for marketing, I think it's called Chiefs. But you sign on to this association and you get instant credibility because you become an authorized Sales Accelerator consultant. You become an author or duct tape marketing. They give you these frameworks that allow you on day one to give you credibility going out on your own. You get mentorship with everyone else who happens to be a duct tape marketing expert or someone who's in B2B CFO and things like that. They give you the tools. They make it easy for you to get access to maybe expensive software that you might need to do your job. And in some cases, they do some marketing for you and will send leads to you. But really, it's almost like they give you that jump start to get going. And I know a lot of people, they'll do that for a couple of years until they feel really solid on their feet about being, in their own consulting business or things like that. But there's also, you may from day one want to say, you know what, I'm going to build my own agency. I want to be more than just me. I either want to build something that I can sell, and that's going to be my goal, is to have something that, maybe could provide legacy wealth for my family or myself. Or you just love working on bigger clients, bigger projects, and having a team around you, and are willing to build something where you may end up spending more of your time running the business than doing the client work. But that's an option for you to do that. So yeah. So when you decide that, okay, I've either had it with corporate America, or you've end up in that situation where you want to start your own business or have to start your own business, you do have a variety of options and models to choose from in order to get started. And that's what's so exciting. And you don't think about that when you're just making that decision to jump and do your own thing.
I think the challenge would be, how do you know which model fits who you are? Because I think a lot of women might pick the wrong one, or not because they lack the skills, but maybe they haven't thought through what their working style is. Maybe they don't fit corporate, maybe they do, or what do they want their days to actually look like? Do they want to be more independent and flexible, or do they want to work in-house? So how do you know you're choosing the right thing?
Yeah. Well, part of it is a little bit of self-reflection on what you want, what you enjoy doing, what your goals are, what's your vision for the future. And then the other part too is you can start with one and change to a different at a certain, amount of time. That's the other thing too, is you're not pigeonholed into something. When you go out on your own, you suddenly have freedom to make different decisions than you might have had if you were in a corporate lane or something like that. So the first thing was said is, I wish when I jumped out on my own, back in before 2000, I wish I had read this book, The E-Myth. And I don't know if you've read that or seen that or not, but The E-Myth is a wonderful book that walks you through, do you want to build a business, or do you just love doing the work that you're doing and want to do it independently? Because there's a huge difference between the two. Because if you're going to start a business, if you decide I want to be a boutique agency, you have to kind of say there's three roles a business owner takes on. Is one, you have to be the visionary, and the primary salesperson. So you have to explain, you have to be really good at, what do I do? Where are we going? Am I inspirational in getting clients to work with me, or am I inspirational in getting people to work for me? Am I inspirational and able to communicate enough to get money to subsidize the growth of my agency and things like that? So you have to kind of say a visionary, but then you also have to be a manager. Do you like managing people? Do you enjoy mentoring others, or dealing with, there's people issues in every business, and does that turn you off, or does that, something that you're just like, no, that's all right. I have no problem with managing people and managing projects and things like that. And then there's the technical part of it. Whatever you're an expert in, who's doing the work, right? And so if you really love being someone who wants to work with every client and really dig deep into the process and do your magic there, well, you can't do that and run the business at the same time if you've got employees and you've built to be something bigger. So that's kind of the first thing you need to decide is, are you looking for more of a lifestyle business, which just means that you're making enough money to support yourself, and maybe you still have some freedom. You get to work with the clients, and you're the one who's, all the successes are you and all the failures are you, but that's okay, because that's what you're looking for, is that independence. If you want that, then obviously you're not going to really want to build a business, which has people and accounting issues and, HR issues and things like that. But some people love that. I decided at a certain point, as I was doing my entrepreneurial venture, that I did not want to manage people. I love doing the work. So I had several points in my career trajectory. I had to make the decision, do I want to build a business and hire people, or do I just want to keep doing the work for my clients themselves? And I chose the solopreneur expert advisor route as opposed to building an agency.
So I have a lot of questions, but let's start with, you're moving from corporate. You're
Yeah.
moving from agency life, marketing side, you're on a team, you have a title, most likely you have a big title. And if you're at our age and you're starting to make this leap and an org chart and people reporting to you and budgets to do things with and train and clients that are already yours. So, what does that psychological shift actually feel like when you move from working for someone to it all being on your own? There's positive and negatives.
There's positive and negatives. I mean, the biggest the thing that upset me the most when I went out on my own was you no longer have an IT person, right? It's like
Yes.
when your computer breaks down or your printer's not working or something like that, you're like, "Wait, who do I call?"
Yes.
Right? So, but you need to have the mindset of there's a couple different things. I think when you go out on your own, psychologically things change, right? So, the one is you do not have the support system that you had when you worked at corporate. So you don't have someone fixing your computer.
Yeah.
You don't have someone, taking care of accounting issues. You don't have someone who, makes sure that there's paper in the printer if you have a big report coming up and you need to print some things or, your Wi-Fi is not working, those kinds of things. So you don't have that support. However, you can then sit down and decide, well, which one of these do I want to tackle versus there are so many outsourcing options for you to get that help. You just need to realize that you're going to have to pay for that, right?
Yeah.
What you didn't have to pay for before, you now have to pay for. But there is such a large industry out there of companies that are designed to support small business owners, right? Whether it's, Intuit software or whether it's an IT managed service company that focuses on solopreneurs and small businesses, or there's a lot of people out there who can help you get that done. What you need to decide as the business owner as you're getting started is I might have to do some of this myself. What do I have to do myself versus what can be outsourced? And that's kind of just sitting down and taking a look at where do you spend your time? What are you good at?
Yeah.
I had a business, I started an e-commerce business, after my kids were born and I didn't want to travel for work too much anymore. And I wanted to see if I could build my own brand. But I was bootstrapping it. And one of the things I was like, okay, well, I can do my own accounting. I will do the bookkeeping and the accounting for a retail business. Huge mistake, right? I wasted so much time, energy, and in the end, money fixing things because I didn't know how to do it, but I could teach myself this can't be that hard. It wasn't that it was hard, but it took every hour that I spent doing accounting was an hour that I was not out selling more business.
Yeah.
It was, and there comes a point where you have to realize that you have certain strengths and you can keep that in house, but you have other things that just pay for it. Just pay for the help that you're going to need. So that's one part of it is this skill set. Another part of going out on your own and psychologically is this loneliness factor,
Yeah.
right? And you don't really consider that, but there's two parts of the loneliness factor is the social part, because you don't really realize how important it is to just say, hey, do you want to go grab lunch? Let's go grab lunch. And you have somebody to talk to during the day. And people who know you, they know your bosses, your environment, your clients, you have someone, to just kind of like share concerns with or joys or successes or happiness, or just have someone to just sit and talk to while you're eating lunch. But that can be overcome. Again, it's one of those things where when I went out on my own, I sat down and said, if you're working out of your home office or any office and you're tired of being by yourself, well, I made a point once a week, I would call someone and schedule lunch, right? And so whether it was someone I used to work with or whether it was someone I just met at a networking meeting or things like that, you start to build social activity in. And you can also join, there are so many women business owner groups out there that can support you, whether it's NABO or SCORE, you can get a SCORE mentor. You
My
can
former
get
client.
Yeah, you can have in Chicago we have the Women's Business Development Network, which is amazing. So there's so many groups out there. I was a member for 10 years of a local bank, Itasca Bank and Trust. It's a small suburban bank here in Chicago, but they were amazing and created this women's initiative business group, and we met monthly, and it was free for bank members, and it was a fantastic way to learn from your peers, other women business owners who were starting to do the same thing. So the last part of the what I would call, or the next part of the loneliness factor of going out on your own that you psychologically need to get used to, is this: you miss collaboration loneliness.
Yeah.
When you work at corporate or in a corporate job, or even for a small agency or something like that, you have other people around you to bounce ideas off of. A client project comes in and you brainstorm together, and your ideas may be bigger and better because you have more viewpoints on it and things like that. So that was one thing that, again, I found lonely to start with when you start working on some client projects. Is you're like, oh, there comes certain points where you're like, oh, I doubt myself, or maybe someone else has an experience that would really apply here, and I don't have that
We're
person.
bouncing ideas off of each other, which is
Bouncing
the biggest
ideas,
part
like,
of
what do
what
you
we
think of
do.
this? Exactly. So but again, you have to be intentional. Go build your collaboration network,
Yeah.
right? So I started over time finding people that, again, from my previous job, if there are people that I really admired and loved their skill set, I'd take them to dinner and say, hey, can I bounce some ideas off of you? Or as you start to network and build strategic partnerships with people, I've gotten to points where I've paid someone. I'm like, you know what? I really need you to sit for 2 hours with me and brainstorm or look at what I've done and give me your input, and I've paid them. Or you do a swap with other marketing people, and you're like, hey, can you help me on this project and give me some insight, and I will do the same thing for you the next time you have a project. So again, it's psychologically, you just have to be more in control and be more proactive about building your support system that you may have lost when you left corporate America.
One of the big challenges that I found was this idea of when you're working for a company or an agency, you're selling that agency, right? And
Yeah.
you're selling their story, and now you're selling your own story. So you're selling yourself. In essence, you're stepping out from behind the curtain, right? Because you were
Yep.
behind somebody, an
Yeah.
entity, a company, and so it's creating your own story, which is a
Yes.
challenge because that can be difficult for you to come up with your own story, let alone to sell yourself and be out there and sell yourself versus selling a concept, an idea, and a brand, which comes very naturally to us as marketers. But when you
Right.
think about it, I'm selling myself in addition to that, that can be a mental challenge.
Yes, it absolutely can be a mental challenge. There's a couple things. This was something when I went out on my own the first time, and I actually had a business partner, another woman, and we were working together. I was strategy, she was design, and we did, have another partner as well who did writing, and she left. So then there was just the two of us. But what we quickly learned was that it's very hard to be objective and look at yourself and come up with, what is your brand. But the thing we were told again and again, we kept saying, oh, we hate selling. We just hate selling. We hate
Yeah.
selling ourselves, right? No, and so you're like, we'll outsource it. We'll even hire a salesperson. We'll do this kind of thing. When you start your own business, you are the only person who can sell for your business
Yes.
for a very long time, because you are the product, you are the service. When clients decide that they want to work with you, if there's just you, or maybe even you and two other employees or something like that, they're buying you. They want you to work on their projects. So you have to understand what it is that you offer, your unique value, in order to sell yourself, to get more work and things like that. And it is very hard to objectively look at yourself and see yourself as others see you. That's why I have a job, because I do that for companies, is help them, see themselves as their clients see them. But I have someone help me do my own brand. It's so hard to do it yourself, because I get lost in my head. I get lost in my own thoughts. I fall in love with my own ideas. But everything about branding that I tell my company, that I tell my clients, is your brand resides in the minds of your stakeholder.
Yeah.
It's a perception that your clients have, or your employees, or your strategic partners. It's what they think you are, not what you think you are. So you have to go out and find out what that is. So when I just got started, I went and interviewed people I had worked with, like clients or people I had worked with at corporate, and said, what am I good at? Please tell me, what am I good at? How do you see me? If you were to recommend me to someone, what would you say? You use their language and things like that. And so that was helpful when I just got started. Then as you start doing more work, you can actually ask your clients, okay, what am I good at? What value did I provide you? What did I give you that you didn't find somewhere else in a competitive offering? And that helps you again further distill your brand and things like that. But I've like I said, I've asked friends. I've paid other consultants. I've worked with coaches because it's really hard to see yourself and as other people do and articulate it in a way that they get. So I know that my clients hire me because I understand branding and brand strategy, and they aren't there yet. They're not at that point. And yet, even when I try to make it more simple for them to understand when I'm talking about the value and things like that, I still sometimes don't meet them where they're at because I assume they're at a certain level and they're not. And so you need outside, external influencers to tell you, Sue, you need to change this language, or Sue, they don't understand what that word means, or you're talking about this and they haven't even done the step before that. And so it's very helpful to get that outside perspective to help you build your brand. But again, when you're starting your own business, you need to realize that you are the brand. It is you. It's your core values. It's how you work. It's your methodology. It's your expertise. It's your availability. I mean, all of that rolls up into what is the brand and what is that customer or client going to get when they work with you. It helps to get someone else to work you through that, or to get you to the point where you can articulate it.
Let's switch over to the positives. What are
Okay.
the biggest surprises and positives of, in essence, being an independent brand and having an independent career?
Yeah. The biggest surprise I found was when I started out and started working at corporate America. Your vision of where you were going to go, or how you were going to, your career was going to go, was, oh, I'm going to work really hard and you're going to get to be VP of marketing,
Yeah.
at some company kind of thing. It was this lane that you knew that you had to follow. The thing that surprised me the most when I went out on my own and I said, oh, I'm gonna be a marketing consultant, I'm gonna be a brand consultant kind of thing, was there are so many ways to make money that you just never thought of. And you can experiment with things. So one of the coolest things I thought was, I mentioned that professor that I had when I was getting my MBA, and he asked me, and he's like, hey, have you ever done focus groups? I need someone to help me do a focus group. And I was like, well, no. And he's like, well, you do research for your clients, you do, qualitative interviews. Let's teach you how to do focus groups kind of thing. And he paid me to learn how to do focus groups and all that. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I kind of like that. Then someone else came to me and said, hey, I know you worked in Latin America for a long time, and have done marketing in Latin America. We're starting a course, an MBA course. Would you like to teach it? And I was like, wow, I've never thought of teaching, and I had never taught before, but I dove head first into that. And for 2.5 years, I taught an MBA class on, international marketing, and took a group of students down to Latin America to do an intensive 3-week course down there. And it was fabulous. And it was something that never would have been offered to me if I had stayed in my corporate lane. I got asked to speak about branding and Latin American marketing and marketing in general. I was like, wow, I never got to speak when I was, working at corporate kind of a thing. So suddenly you develop these speaking skills. But what's great about, the fact that you will get asked to do different things and you can experiment is every one of those that you do, you learn about yourself. That was a big surprise to me, you learn more about what you're good at, what you enjoy doing. It helps you focus your business. The more you go through, you're like, you know what, I really enjoy doing the focus groups, but it's not what I'm, the absolute best at. There are people that are better than that. And so I'm going to stay over here in what I'm really good at. And it helps you to figure that out as you go forward. Find your zone of genius, and say, this is my expertise. It helps you build the brand, which we were just talking about. But it is really surprising how when you go out on your own and you raise your hand, you say, I have this expertise and I know how to help companies do something. all these different variety of activities and opportunities are suddenly open to you, and you have the ability to say yes or no to them. And I absolutely loved that and found that surprising.
So it's about keeping your mind open and talking to as many people as possible to
Yes.
see what's out there.
Yeah, every conversation you could discover something unique and different, of what you could be doing or what you could not be doing, because that's not the road you want to go down. So,
So just elaborate on work-life balance and independence and managing your own schedule, because I found that that's the thing that I love the most is being able to manage my schedule. I'm not a morning person. I don't start recording before 11 a.m.
yeah,
That sort of things.
yes.
Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much there's so much joy, there's so much independence in being on your own, and you do have that flexibility. So, everyone's like, oh, you start your own business, you get to be your own boss, you get to set your own hours and things like that, and you do. So, like you said, if you're younger and you have children, like when I had children, I worked around. I had to take my kids to daycare, because it was like I could not work with them at
Yeah.
home. So then I would work around daycare hours, or if they were home, I would work around nap time and things like that. But on the flip side, you do get to manage your time, but you still have to get the work done. So you might have to work after 8 p.m., or you might have to work
Yes.
on Saturdays, or you might have to work on, this kind of a thing. So you do control your time and you can be more flexible. If I have to take time off to take my daughter to a doctor or something like that, I don't have to ask permission from anyone. I just know I have to rearrange my schedule to accommodate that and things like that. So there is that work-life balance that's there, but do realize that, if you sell a client job and they need it by this date, one way or the other, you've got to get it done by that date. And it may mean that you have to work at times that, I don't like working late at night. You're talking about you don't start, recording till 11. I'm better in the morning and worse in the afternoon and in the evening. So I don't like working in the evening. But you know what? Sometimes you have to because you got to meet that deadline. But you do have, like I said, I still love that because I'm in control.
Yeah.
I committed to the client project. I know that I can get it done at certain points during the day is when I get my most productive work done. And so I schedule around that. So, like you're talking about, you record at a certain time. I do all my phone calls and answer all my emails at a certain time when I don't have to be 100%, on my game. That's when I can do more of what I call like follow up busy work kind of stuff. Versus, between like 8 and 3 p.m., those are my peak productive, hours. And that's when I need to do my writing, my research, my client meetings, and, things like that. So,
I find that you are lighting your own fire. You're having to light your own fire. And because of that, you're working harder because you're working for
oh, yeah.
yourself, just, a certain extent. And it's not like we're at a regular job, you're like, okay, it's 5, it's 6 o'clock, but
Right,
it's quitting time in
right.
your mind, right? But if you're working on your own, it's like I need to finish XYZ, or
Yeah,
in my head, this episode doesn't get launched, the
right,
social media doesn't get out. I've got 5
right.
steps of things I got to. So you're pushing yourself, but you want to push yourself.
Right. That's the difference. It's yours. The success is yours and you want to push yourself. Same thing. It's like if it's just you and your organization, going on vacation is very hard. Going on vacation is hard no matter what. But
Yeah.
going on vacation is very hard when it's just you because, like when my husband in his job, he has people who work for him who could take a phone call or could fix something that goes wrong in that week that you're gone or things like that. For me, I have to get so much stuff done before we go. And then there's no one answering the phones for that week while I'm gone or something. And then you've got to catch up on the back end for what was happening. So you just have to, again, you just have to plan. You have to be more proactive in managing your time, managing your schedule, getting the work done, and knowing when you're available, when you're not available. And I do have people who work with, they're not employees, but I have people that I trust that I bring in on certain client projects and things like that to help me get things done, which is awesome, and very helpful. I can do more with more resources, but they still are not your company and can cover for you in certain times when you're either on vacation or just, unavailable. So, yeah, but again, like you were saying, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I've been on my own for over 25 years, and love it. Would not trade it.
Any additional insight for people who are thinking about flying solo? I find that a lot of women that I talk to were laid off or lost their job in
Yes.
corporate. In
Yep.
fact, most.
Yeah.
Some left of their own accord, but most were let go. And so that becoming a solo entrepreneur becomes what their option is at the time.
Right.
And frankly, it
Absolutely.
happens to a lot of women who over 50, right?
Yep.
The data says that founders over 50 are nearly twice as successful as founders in their 30s,
Yes.
which runs counter to the narrative that startups hire the 20 somethings, right?
Right.
Is there some sort of recommendation that you would have in terms of a number of years experience?
It depends what your expertise is, what your skill is. Let's say you're an AI expert,
Yeah.
and you're 22, you're going to get hired tomorrow. Clients will take you because that's the hot demand that's right now. So if you know AI just this much more than your client does, you're the expert. They're going to hire you. So part of it, there's a couple things. One is when I look back on it, when I was younger, I was fearless. So I could take a jump to go into entrepreneurism and I was not afraid to do it, but I had to scrap because I didn't know anything about entrepreneurism and hadn't built a big network of supporters. I hadn't worked with, I wanted to go into consulting. Well, I hadn't worked even with consultants to like have a model to look after or someone to kind of mentor and things like that. So when you're in your 20s, you have the fearlessness, you have the energy, you might have an awesome idea and you're not afraid to go after it. When you're in your 50s, though, what really, really gets you to grow faster is not only the expertise you talked about, but it's you've built a network. You have people that you can call and say, help me grow. Help me with an introduction. Help me figure out how to write a proposal. Help me find a lawyer that I need to help me with my contracts or things like that. You have this network and you have experience that you've done this work for others that you can say to your potential client, oh my gosh, I've got a track record of here's 8 case stories I can show you of how I helped a business grow. And things like that. And so you're much more credible, you're much more believable. The other thing too, which was something I found interesting, was you also know how to speak to your client. And what I mean by that was, if we go back to when I went out on my own, and this was probably like, not went out on my own, but started Brand Strong Marketing, that iteration. And one of the things people kept asking me for, and this was like 12 years ago, was social media was taking off.
Yeah.
And businesses were hearing everywhere that you need to be on social and it's free and it's awesome and things like that. And so even though I was brand strategy, social media was what would get me in the door if you started to talk about that. And then you would kind of just be savvy enough to tell your clients, you know what, you want to jump right into social media, but you can't even tell me who your ideal client is and what you're good at and what your sales messages are. So we're going to have to take 10 steps back and do that branding piece. So that was my advantage and why I got clients was that I could do that. However, I met this group. It was a husband and a wife were starting a social media firm and they were in their 20s. They were amazing at the technical part of social media. They knew how to build the graphics fast. They knew all about hashtags. They knew which platforms did what and things like that. But we were actually talking about aligning because what they found out was they said, yes, but when we go sit in a room with a business owner or a CEO or an executive team, we look like idiots because we can't talk the talk. We have not worked in business. We don't understand their pain points. They're telling us they want us to create content that their clients will find relevant and appreciate. We don't know what their clients are going through. We don't know how to do that. So we were working in the end, and I went with them to a client call, and I just sat there as the expert on business, excuse me, while they talked about what they could do for their clients in terms of the technical and application aspect of social media. You have the expertise, you know how to do things, but you also know how to talk to your client. So it's definitely, knowing your craft, having experience, having confidence, and being able to communicate and relate to your client. That's the experience when you're over 50 that I think is the big benefit that you have and why they succeed.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights today, Sue. I learned a lot that I didn't know and a lot of different avenues that I'm looking to explore in the future. We're going to provide links to your website and your contact information in the transcript. Don't forget to subscribe and share. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Kelly.